Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to almost June. Almost June.
Yeah. Is that what today is?
Today's almost June. Yeah. So it's like, you get that last part of May and you're like it's almost June. So
It has went really fast, it seems to me. I don't know about you, but yes.
Well, I think part of it to me has been the weather's been so crazy because I'm used to this time of year being more sunny and warm.
Yeah.
And we get the dark clouds and the rain and
It's like living in England.
yeah. I don't know and everything, but
I was
gonna say
I've just heard stories.
Yeah.
And Andrew watches a lot of British shows, and it's
BBC.
always cloudy in there.
Always cloudy, yeah, on the BBC.
Yeah.
So
They should just change BritBox to cloudy.
that's why they left and went to all these other colonies. Yeah. Because the weather was so bad. And that's historically inaccurate, but I just want to say that.
Oh, I believe you. You don't do that. I trust everything you say, Chris.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Very good. And you just came back from
just vacation. Went along Lake Michigan. We got to Lake Michigan, then went all the way up to the Up. And
is that what it's called?
Yeah, the Up is the Upper Peninsula.
But it's technically called the Up. Or is this another thing you're just saying?
That's a word. That's a word they say. They say the Up.
All right.
The Upper Peninsula. So that got us to Lake Superior, and then we're on the other side to Lake Huron. So we did 3 of the Great Lakes. We got to see. So
well, yes, and similar to what you're saying, Angie, when she went up with her siblings went that way, and she took a picture like on the, I guess the beach. I guess they call it a beach, right? But it, like you said, I looked and I was like, well, I thought she was in the beach. I didn't know she went to the ocean. Like, where are you? But it's beautiful. It's just like being at the ocean.
It's really amazing is to have that view, and you're like, oh, great. But salt water and no sharks. So it's
how awesome.
Yeah, it's even better in my opinion.
All right. Well, let's see. Postulations with Chris. It's been a minute, but hey, we're like vacations are necessary.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't feel good. Things just happen. But we're here and it's available.
Yeah. Always available.
I mean, it's always there. I'm sure people go back. Probably we're kind of going back through like Chosen right now. Start season 1.
Yeah, some people go.
So I'm sure people have went back to season 1 and they're just binging their way back through.
I'm sure there's quite a lot of people who do that.
Tens of ones.
Tens of ones.
Is that a real number?
I don't.
It doesn't
know
matter.
anything about math.
That's not how we do it, right? But anyway, so what's going on in the life of Eastern Heights right now?
So June is crazy. So as we get into June, we got youth camp coming up.
Oh yeah.
So we got
remember those days?
Yeah,
so I remember. You still
got a good group of youth going off on youth camp, and then we have after that vacation Bible school comes up. We've got some other events that spread around for the month of June, opportunities to get to do stuff, and so June's gonna be pretty packed and pretty busy for us. Some cool stuff that's going on. We have then our exploratory team has been giving its final report. Then that's going to be setting up to give a report to the church. So that's going to be some exciting stuff too coming out.
That's on.
So that's going to towards the end of June, and then we'll come back in August and really present to the church kind of some vision ideas for where we'd like to go the next 3 years. So this has been going on for about 6 months of doing that work. And now we're going to meet one more time with this advisory group, and then we'll put it together over July and present it in August. So pretty exciting stuff on that.
So that's like, and I know I'm sure there's different. Your wife thought Michigan was gorgeous.
Yeah.
But she already told you that.
Yeah.
You knew that. If you didn't know, nobody knows. But now the whole world knows.
Yeah.
If you didn't, now you do.
Now we know nothing about the big cities. We didn't go to any of the big cities. So people are like, well, what'd you think of Detroit? I was like, I didn't go anywhere near Detroit.
Yeah.
So we were all,
not enough of it to stay away.
Yeah, well, we were trying to get out, and away and see stuff. So, but anyways, you were saying something.
Oh well, yeah. Like this is just like I don't know that people know and understand like how different churches work, and that's like that sounds fun to say how churches work.
Yeah.
But like I know it's different in different denominations. I'm not exactly sure how it works except for here. But like it's kind of like the president and like Congress, right? Like a lot of decisions and most things that are done in our church are voted on and like you couldn't just say I'm going to paint all the walls pink.
No.
Could you? I mean,
Well,
do you have like a
I could-
veto?
I-
What is that called? Like the president has, where you can just hammer it through?
I don't have an official veto. And there's been some things I have vetoed and been overruled.
Oh, really? So you can be?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What if you just said absolutely not? This is how we're doing it. Can you do that?
I could.
Okay, I'm just curious, like how the word, people
yeah.
are like, well,
I could. I have rarely ever done that. But still, I mean, so we're our church. This is kind of interesting question. Our church is what's called a congregational led church.
okay,
And a congregational led church means that major issues are all voted on by the church body as a whole. Now, they will, that church body will vote folks into positions and allow them to do their jobs. So it doesn't mean everything has to be voted. But for example, our church elects what are called trustees. Trustees are to take care of the facility. And so if the AC unit, this kind of example is maybe more real than we want, but if the AC unit goes down, they don't have to come back to the church to vote whether to fix the AC unit. The trustees have guidelines they follow, so they'll get one or two estimates, then they'll make a decision and get the AC unit fixed. So it's it speeds up. But the congregation has voted in those trustees, so they've empowered them to do that. But the trustees at the same time can't. They have a limit to what they're supposed to do, and then they come back and they give quarterly updates and say, "Hey, the air conditioning went down. We fixed it. Here's what we did." And so they're always open to questions. So that's kind of a congregational led church. That's done, and that's how we're structured. So deacons kind of have a responsibility for the spiritual life of the church. The trustees do the building. The finance team oversees the money. So things are kind of sorted out in the different areas, and then they come back quarterly and share with the church, and then the church votes. So we don't hire anybody without the church vote. We don't put anybody into positions without the church vote. So the church has the ability to vote on those. So what we'll be doing coming up later, probably more than the answer you want, but even as we look at doing a vision for the church, we don't come out to the church. Leadership doesn't come out to the church and say, "This is what we're going to do," and you all just need to get with it. What we'll say is, we as leaders have met, and that team that's met has been made up of different folks in the church. So it's just not all just like pastors.
all your buddies,
Or my buddy, or
your team,
or yes men.
Yeah, all your yes men.
And then we'll come. So some of the stuff that came out of that discussion was interesting, because it wasn't all like, "Well, what do you think, Pastor Chris?" It was, what do we see? What are we praying about? And then they'll come to church and they'll say, here's what we think would be a vision. What do you all think? And then there'll be a time of discussion and voting. So it's very congregationally led. It moves a little bit slower, but I think that it allows people to be more plugged in and a part of what's going on.
Yeah. So like me, Angie, and I were parts of a couple of different things, and it like when you said slow, but there is a lot of, for one, not just a discussion, but I know there's always so much prayer, and then obviously we're always asking for everyone to be in prayer when you're making decisions and doing things, and it's being open, like that's probably tough. And I was thinking about, part of what I was thinking like today is like all the different seasons that we go through in life, and like that church thing is kind of the same, but like I don't know, I'm at an age like this, and I'll just speak strictly as manly as I can be manly, right? But it's like you just go through things. So like at my age, I'm getting ready to be 57, right? And you start thinking about stuff, and it's like, okay, I've been in the same career for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
It's like what was so important early to me was like provide, and that was what I thought was my main thing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as men, sometimes we can get caught up so much in providing that we miss, or at least I can say I did miss a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Because you make sacrifices, same as the moms that are, they make tons of sacrifices. But then as you get older, like at my age now, it's like, okay, now time's more important to me because I probably have less of it.
Yeah.
Which I could have less of it at 20. You don't know that answer, but at least you start thinking about you don't have as much. I definitely don't have as much as I've had so far. unless I live to be 114. Which
Yeah.
I'm not Jimmy Cricket, so I'm not going to do that. But then you're also concerned about, say, back to, okay, do I have everything in place so that I can make certain changes and have more time? And do I
Yeah.
have things in place to be able to do that and live? Which those choices probably most of them had to be made earlier to build towards that. But life happens too. Like, illness can wipe out your checking. I mean, there's so many different life events that can happen. So it really is just like discerning that. Like when you're making a choice for the church, or when it's like you just all the scriptures of, I knew before I formed you in the womb, and for I know the plans I have for you. Like there's so many scriptures, and we're always like chasing, trying to figure out like what is it that he wants? Like what am I supposed to be doing? And you have a different view on that because you're not so much of like, I don't know that you don't think everybody has purpose. I don't think that's it, because we do have a sole purpose.
Yeah.
Literally a sole purpose. But like trying to figure all that out.
I think,
and doing that even for the church. Like that's gotta be like moving forward, because it's gotta be scary. Like, oh wait, we've never had flashing lights and smoke on the worship thing. Not that we're doing that. I'm just saying like something like that. But what if that was a thing? Like, okay, how do we that doesn't I don't like that, but deciding what God wants for the church and for ourselves is tough. And we put a lot of
I think we got
there's a lot of books out there.
I was talking to a college class about the college class I teach, and I was saying that as I've gotten older, I've tried to differentiate what in my life is something I believe and what is something I prefer. And I think when you're younger, it's hard to differentiate that. And I'm not trying to be insulting here, but everything you think is important, you think is important. And therefore, you've got to get it all organized and get it all put in place. And part of it just life experiences that help change you on that. But everything is, and the way I'm doing it must be the right way I'm doing it. So I see this on social media a lot of times. Somebody goes and does something. So like we go on the trip to Michigan, and it's at my age, I went up to Michigan. I was able to go do this trip because my kids are older. They can take care of themselves. I can go do this trip, and it was fun. It may not be what you want to do. It may be completely bore you out of your mind. And you're not in. That's completely fine. Here's the trip I did. But when I was maybe younger, like everybody should be doing this. Everybody needs to get back to nature, and if you're not getting back to nature, there's something wrong with you. You're not bringing your kids out in the woods and teaching them how to kill something. There's something wrong with you. And younger, so everything's got to be, I'm right, and I got to be right, and I got to convince everybody I'm right. And you look through back at your life, you see how many times you change. As you get older, you start going, okay, there's things that are foundational things that are true, and then there's preferences. So foundational thing, the only way I have a relationship with God is through Jesus Christ. How do I grow in that relationship? Preferences. For some people, it's reading the Bible. For other people, it's listening to the Bible on tape podcast. It's it's quite religious. It's not. This is the way that works for me, so everybody must do it. It's the building foundation is you're not going to have a relationship with God unless it's through Jesus Christ. Now, how do you grow in that? There's different ways.
You know what? That's
preference versus what's the belief as opposed to my and so at this point in my life, I'm finding those things. I don't fight over the preferences, but I will stand on the beliefs.
Yeah, and that's that's funny, because it's like you said, everybody's different. Like for me, like I don't know, you physically read books. Like you enjoy physically.
Oh yeah,
reading. Angie, and she listens to Audible, but for her the most enjoyment, she physically enjoys reading a book. I personally cannot read a book. If I'm reading a book 5 minutes in, I'm going to be asleep.
Yeah.
But my 30-minute drive to work and home, that gives me an hour a day. I can listen to it easily. Now, there's some advantages to physically reading, because you can take notes, and I think you take a little more of it in. But maybe Audible, some people learn that way.
Yeah.
But it is true. Like we try to force, like, okay, so they said you have to read, what you should read your script, but like for some people, it is like. So I don't know if like there's like when you're as an individual, you're trying to find like how your relationship grows with God, like whatever that is. Like if it's reading the scriptures you get, or worship, singing and worship, or I don't know, but it's like you read and it's like, oh gosh, this guy reads 5 scriptures every morning, man. And look at this, like I got to do that. But it's like, okay, for me, that may not be the thing.
Well,
I
what
might
is that
just need to
producing
be in
you
prayer.
when you're looking at somebody else and you're saying, I got to be like that?
Yeah.
You're not pursuing Christ. You're pursuing them. And you're making yourself miserable. The other thing I think that's cool about differentiating the beliefs and the preferences is that I can come into church and we can sing a song that I don't like, or we can do a style we don't like, and I can be perfectly okay with that because I'm saying that's a preference. I would prefer this way, but I'm in a congregation with people and there's some other people in the church that like that. So because it's a preference, I can give it up. I can be okay, and I can be in a different type of worship service that maybe does not necessarily fit me. When you aren't able to do that, then that preference of worship has to be this way becomes your belief. Then you cannot give. It's got to be your way, or you're wrong. You're going somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that sounds so simple, but there are people that literally will change churches.
Yeah.
Because of the worship.
Yeah.
Maybe because they had a 9-piece band, or because they didn't have any band.
Yeah. And it becomes even more minute stuff. Like, you're not doing Lord's Supper like I think. Well, is that a belief, or is that a preference? Because if you look at the scriptures, there's not a whole lot about how they do the Lord's Supper. What is in there? It says, "Do it." That's
right.
Do it, and do it in remembrance of me. But there's not a layout of you have to do it this way. So what's my preference? Okay, this is my way I prefer, but I can still do the Lord's Supper with other people in a different manner because I'm doing the belief thing. I'm doing it, and I'm doing it with others, and I'm doing remembrance of Jesus, even if it isn't being done necessarily the way I prefer. I can be okay with it because I can say, well, that's a preference. So that's a powerful. And you take that even in relationships. Since we're talking about, but take about your relationship with like your spouse. There's really great marriage books out there, and they're wonderful to read. But too often people say, okay, this is what the book says, and this is what we got to do. Hey, successful marriages will tell you there's not one thing that works for everybody. You got to find, and it changes.
Yeah.
So we just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and we have changed in 30 years. And as we have changed, we've had to adjust our understanding, our relationship with each other. And that is healthy and right. But if we were like, this is the only way to do it, and this is the foundational way to do it, and everybody else should be doing this, I don't think your relationship will last too long, because you're fighting over a preference instead of over a belief. So, okay, so I digress.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
I don't even know where I'm going from there.
But I'd say, so going all the way back, that's why we, and I'm not judging our churches, but one of the reasons why we do congregational is because as a group, you can find out whether or not something is a preference or a belief. So as we're talking among each other, we can say, well, wait a minute. We all like this, but do we have to always do it this way? And is this thing that we're doing really helping us maintain the belief? And so that's why we come back and we talk and we do groups, and it drives me crazy. I'll be completely honest, because after 25 years, I'm like, can I just say this is what we're supposed to do, and you all agree with me? And it's like, no, because we all also have a sin nature, and so that also helps check the situation. I tell people this story that during COVID, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew how to handle this. Everyone after the fact. I've had plenty of people after the fact tell me what we should have done. But in the midst of it, nobody knew what was going on.
Right.
And so we formed this committee in the church. And it was made up of leaders, and it was just made up of just some church members, made up of doctor. And we would meet, and they shot down some of my ideas. But I told him, I said, listen, here, I can't be the sole person directing everything. We've got to talk this out. We've got to hear each other's opinions, and then we've got to come together in agreement. And it was not always that everybody was like, this is my preference. It's everybody says, we got to be unified. And it was really frustrating at times for me because I wanted to move forward on something, but it was healthy in that it was a group making the decision, not me.
Yeah.
And I think that helped our church move through COVID and come out of it very unified because people felt like their voices were being heard and being discussed. And even if we didn't do what they wanted, they knew, but people were listening.
Yeah.
People were concerned. So I like that. But on the other hand, during it, I was like frustrated because I was like, "Oh, I got this plan. This is what we're going to do." And, and they're like, "No, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's the moment to do it." Or I was like, "Do this," and someone else, "I don't know, I agree with that." But let's all come together and be unified. So
yeah, and there were so many lessons. Like now that I consider it over, but I know people are still getting it, still exists. But we can sit here together without a mask. And all that. But every time I look back on it, especially like even through work, through our marriage with our kids, it's like the more you look back and kind of really study and think about, reflect on that period, there was just a lot of amazing things that were either you learned about yourself or you learned about people, because it was like, I mean, when you talk about, like we were talking about, like some people like this worship and they can't, but it was like a mask. Like there was the people that just don't believe in a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask. I can't tell them. But then for people that you would be around that had a parent or a kid at home that had asthma really bad or had CPL or something to where you just wanted to protect them. Like it's like people almost at some point started to give, okay, it's like, you know what? I don't believe in these masks. I don't, but for the care of others, like for other people's, people, you almost had to put other people for yourself because you couldn't. There was a lot of things that you thought you could do and wanted to do that you just couldn't do.
No,
and you had to learn. Like,
and I think
it was very humbling for one.
I think it was, and I think it really. There's a lot I can talk about that. And it was amazing to see people who had been kind of in the background of the church suddenly rise up in that time and start finding solutions and ways to reach out to people. And I noticed there was a spectrum, but the most you heard the people complaining the most because they were the loudest, but they really weren't the ones making a difference. And that's what they were complaining.
Kind of normal,
I think so.
I mean, in a lot of situations,
I think so. But they really, if you look back, they were somewhat of a minority. They were a loud minority that was screaming that they didn't like stuff. But what amazed me was the stuff that the folks that were being quiet, whether they liked stuff or not, were coming up with crazy things to do. So they did Easter caroling outside the windows of visiting people's homes and singing in the front lawns. One lady in our church would send 2 cutout pieces of paper, like a hand, with yarn, and she sent it. It was a hug. Yeah. And you'd open it up, and she was sending it to people in the church. Says, "Here's my hug to you." And they were, folks were coming up with all sorts of. These were quiet. They weren't loud, and so you hear these loud complainers, but they did nothing to help the situation. Right. But the other group that was being quiet over here was rising up, coming up with stuff, and it was really kind of cool. And you're like, "Oh wow, they are catching that thing to be like Jesus." And I told Sheila, I said there was times I would just be over almost to tears watching folks in our church, taking on in the opportunities and finding new ways and new gifts. And even with you, I tell people the story about where you came up and said, "Hey, we could start broadcasting." And so we weren't prepared for that, but you'd been doing it for a year and you brought all of that in. And I said, we were ahead of the curve on going up, but it was that was not something we knew you did. Yeah. But you did with work, and you walk in with all this stuff and go, okay. And we're like, I have no idea what this guy's doing at this point. But it worked. Yeah, but it worked. But yeah, we were doing all sorts of funny stuff, trying to plan different things. So it was, again, that was here's my preference, the way I wish things were. But my foundational belief is that you love God and you love others. So I set aside some of my preferences so I could be loving God and loving
Hmm.
others. And I think that's an overall thing we need to do as we get older is continue to keep doing that. Is saying, is this thing I'm holding to really just a preference? And is it keeping me from the foundational beliefs I really should be holding to?
Wow. So that's
Yeah.
like that was like maybe the longest answer.
Oh wow!
No,
Sorry.
but in the end, like it always amazes me how like and you do that with your sermons very well, like how everything ties together. The only thing I'm gonna ask is like you got to bring out some props, okay? If
Oh,
you all watch this and you remember the old days when Chris had props, Kevin, he needs some kind of prop,
I
like
haven't.
maybe not a javelin or anything he's going to throw out into the audience, but just something. You know,
Yeah.
maybe a funny hat or.
You know, years ago, this is a side. Years ago, I had a committee that used to help me on that.
What's your prop? The prop committee.
They were. It was the early years of when I was redoing the worship, and we would meet, and it was part of the worship team, and myself, and one or two outside people, and we would talk about how to tie in the sermons with the folks. It was really, it was a fun group, and they came up with something.
Yes, and we remember
The worst one. I gotta say this. How much shut up. The worst one, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody on this.
Especially if you're the one that thought of it.
Is 1 year for Father's Day, they decided to have an ugly tie contest.
Hmm.
And so they said, we're going to have an ugly tie contest. And so the guys, well, one of the people who won was not competing in the ugly tie
Yeah, I was
contest.
going to say that's probably. I was thinking that was probably going to be what we were going to say. Man, you win.
Like, I wasn't competing. We're like,
Yes.
oh, okay. So that's why we went to the Hawaiian shirts.
Yes, I know. I've done that. Believe it or not, there's like a same kind of side note. There's a I don't know, a tradition like in the car business when somebody first person when they sell their first car, you cut their ties.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So years ago, we used to all wear ties. Like that's all changed.
Yeah,
Everybody's casual now for everything. But when everybody did wear a tie, and it was the new person. Like sometimes when you went to cut it, like everybody would be like, "Man, you're gonna get your tie cut," or they knew it. And you would assume it was ugly. And then like one guy's like, "Dude, that was my favorite. Like that's my favorite tie. I love that tie. I can't believe you all." It's like, "Oh, we thought you wore that because you didn't care about it. It doesn't look like you care about it."
We don't know if you remember when L.T. Roy did that one time in church to me.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
your tie?
Yeah, he came and cut my tie. And I didn't know, but he was involved in trucks. And that's where he got that from.
Okay.
And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like celebrating. For the church celebrating, he cut my tie. But I was like, the other people in the congregation knew that. They were like, yeah, that's what you do when you celebrate. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. How's that a celebration?
I wish I'd known. I just saw this guy coming at me with scissors.
From the audience running.
Yeah.
So, but now it's kind of how you brought all that together. But like started out talking about like mechanics, really the mechanics kind of the church and how we make decisions, but how that also can apply to things. And then you moved into the preferences versus belief. Well, beliefs.
Versus, what is your beliefs? And what is your preferences? And don't mix those two.
Yeah. And so in trying to figure out purpose and all that we do all the time, like we kind of answered it really because it's like finding it constantly changes. Maybe I don't know that our purpose is to serve, glorify God, and to serve and to spread the God. I mean that is our
the belief remains, but the preference by which you do what God's called you to do changes over time.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
And it's really just being the basics. Like, what do you believe that God was? Had grace, obviously for us, love. He also is. There is punishment. There are consequences for sin because we deal with that constantly. Everything that happens around us is a consequence of sin from early. But really, just keeping that your beliefs and your purpose will change if you follow those beliefs. Yeah. So, like you said, like it was people that stepped up during that time. It's like, okay, that's their purpose. The year before that wasn't okay. When I'm going to learn how to cut hands and make yarn, or I'm going to learn how to reach out to people. Or we're going to learn how to take video from 5 different houses and put it all in one and make a Sunday church service. Yeah. But we all had the same belief and the same want, which was to help help our church family, but make sure they were getting the message and life wasn't that part of our life wasn't interrupted. And So that was that point that made that your purpose. It wasn't something you thought of a year before, and that a year later that could be totally different. So it's really, you're right. If you have your core beliefs and what you believe, then your purpose will be following that. Whether it's opening a door for just being kind to someone, or whatever it is, it can happen all day, every day.
Yeah,
it could change.
It's incredible, and allowing God to change that and use your personalities and your skills and stuff makes it okay to when it changes.
Yeah.
So you may be, for years, this is what I've done. And God may say, well, we're going to change that. And you can say, okay, I'm okay. I can let that go. I can let somebody else take that on. And I can go and pursue this other ministry. Yeah.
Awesome. See,
cool.
You tied it all together. All right. Well, hopefully, I think we'll be back in June.
Yes.
Unless it's Juneteenth, and then we can't do it on that day. That's a vacation.
Oh, that is? Okay. Yeah.
I'm not going to work on Juneteenth. But anyway.
We'll be back, though.
We'll be back.
Well, let me close this in a word of prayer.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your goodness and your love. We thank you for that you work through us. And God, we just pray that we will focus on what is the foundational beliefs and be aware of our preferences and adjust those to your will. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right.
All right.
See ya. Have some, watch me and this.